Hello everyone, we're here at the National Holocaust Museum of the United States in Washington, D.C.
It's a bit dark, so it's hard to see, but we're going to take you through the exhibits. The first thing, when you come in, they give you a little booklet identification card, and basically you're put into the life of a victim of the Holocaust, and it's meant to help you identify more personally with the whole experience. So rather than being, Joe Schmo from 2020 living America's regular life, whatever, you can actually feel how these people felt. It gives you a more personal connection with the actual experience and the story, which I think is a good idea so far. So we're gonna see how the whole museum is laid out. We're gonna show you the things that we think are the most impactful and the most interesting.
In this section of the museum, it talks about how the Jews went to many different places and they were turned away time and time again by multiple countries. And many of them ended up having to even go back to Europe after being turned away by so many countries in the Western Hemisphere. All around us you can see, I'm assuming, victims and survivors of the Holocaust, people who had to participate in some way, or maybe just Jews of Europe. I don't know. But it's interesting.
Now imagine being in here with 200 other people.
No, I think if they do like 80 probably in here, just packed in tight. Probably have people like in all the movies trying to pry open one of these floorboards, but the branding of the arms of the people who went to the concentration camps. Something that even the survivors had to live with. The crematorium where they'd burn the bodies. This is, I'm assuming, just a replica of the front of the crematoriums.
So the first section was about Germany revving up for war. Then there was the war, like the meat of the war period, where they were advancing throughout all of Europe, and now we're on the retreat, and this is where things start to get very desperate for the Jews. As the Germans know they're going to lose the war, they start clearing out the camps.
The German army fought until this is what was left of the entire German Reich. So one thing that Danish people really love to drone on about is that during World War II, pretty much every single Jew in the entire country of Denmark was rescued and smuggled into Sweden by local fishermen and anybody else really who had boats. So this is maybe an original ship or a replica or just a similar ship to the ones used, but almost every single Jew in the entire nation of Denmark survived the Holocaust thanks to those fishermen.
Yeah, it says right here 7,220 Danish Jews were brought to safety. Almost 500 Jews were deported to a specific ghetto, and only 51, all but 51 survived the Holocaust. So unfortunately 51 Jews did die in the Holocaust, but of the original number, 7,220.
So I don't know what this is going to be talking about yet, but I see the beautiful PPSH. Oh, okay, this is about the Slovak Uprising. Basically, the National Army of Slovakia rose up against the Germans while being their allies and fighting alongside them throughout the majority of the war, and even participating in the dismantling of the Czech Republic. The Slovaks at the very end of the war trying to kind of save themselves and rebel against the Germans. They took up arms and tried to fight the Germans off. This is a Soviet PPSH, along with a bunch of other stuff. It's really interesting. And talks about like Jewish partisans in Yugoslavia, the only country to liberate itself, how there was Jewish fighters in Le Marquis, but everyone who's not French understands that the French resistance didn't actually do that much. I think they have original fencing from one of the camps right here. It doesn't have a thing saying which camp it came from though, unfortunately. It just says don't touch it. There's an alarm. All the people trying to get their papers to come to the United States, just as difficult as it is today. I think we've pretty much wound down our trip here, but this is probably one of the most famous sayings about the Holocaust, and it's basically talking about how if you see wrong, you should act against it, because you never know when you're going to be the one who's being wronged. So, that's it from here. Let's see what's next in Washington, D.C. All right, we're here at the African American History Museum with a real-life African American. Tell them where you're from.
I'm from Africa.
Where in Africa?
North Africa.
What's your name and what country?
Morocco.
What's your name?
My name is Marwa.
Which is almost Morocco, so she was close. All right, so this
if you
picture, picture is actually about a river that we made sacrifices. We sacrificed to these goddesses back in Nigeria years ago.
I think so. This is an art piece about West African slaves, and as you know, recently in prior videos we went to the two big slave posts, the slave outposts of Nigeria, Calabar and Bidegri, and you can see the effects of that in the New World.
Across piano, traded like cattle, raped like animal, left for dead, sub drive for inspiration, and love with the idea of living long enough to simply write about it, push it out my body, and watch my son slowly grow into it. You said you wanted home. Now what you gonna do?
All right, so we have a pretty big Nigerian following, and this is actually a Yoruba artwork from the town of Ise, just outside of Accra.
Really intricate carving.
So, black culture has been enormous in the impact that it's had on the United States. These are some of the biggest musicians in probably the world's history, especially Michael Jackson. I'm just going to say it straight up. Michael Jackson's probably the biggest musician that's ever existed, probably ever will exist for at least a while. So, yeah, he had a huge impact, and he was originally black.
The beauty of life is to be outside of the box, and to limit a human being to one mode of expression is really a crime.
Is that a quote from something, or did you make that up?
No, that's Herbie Hancock quote. A lot of people don't know, but the banjo is from West Africa.
And it was originally called the?
Banjo.
Banjar. All right, this is Jesse Owens. Everybody knows him from the Berlin Olympics. What's the movie about him? What was the movie about him called?
Race. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. You can't hit it.
Keep going.
You can hit what?
His hands can't hit what his eyes can't see.
So something that's really interesting is during the American Revolution, obviously black people were here and they ended up fighting on both sides, but overwhelmingly decided to fight on the British behalf. 20,000 African Americans, or I don't know what you'd really call them at the time because there was no America, decided to fight for the British, while 5,000 to 6,000 ended up fighting for the Patriots. So there was also, during the War of 1812, a lot of African Americans who were enslaved, and even some freemen at the time, where they encountered the British troops as they were coming to burn down the Capitol building here in Washington, D.C. And it says right here that hundreds of them ended up actually joining the British forces. They enlisted with the British Marines, and they went and they fought against the United States.
And burned down the White House.
So African Americans were alongside the British forces when they came here to DC and they burned down the White House. So during the First World War, the 369th Regiment, known as the Harlem Hellfighters, was an all-black unit, and because the American generals didn't think that they would be able to fight very well, they actually gave that unit over to the French, so that's why they ended up wearing the Adrian cap rather than the traditional helmet that the Americans wore. But when they were given over to the French, they ended up being some of the best fighters that they had towards the end of the war, and they ended up proving themselves time and time again and being heavily, heavily decorated. So, I always thought his name was Doris Miller, but I guess it's Dory Miller. They're actually making an aircraft carrier and naming it after him. He was a member of the United States Navy during Pearl Harbor, and he manned an aircraft gun despite the fact that he was not an anti-aircraft gunner to shoot down or fire back at the Japanese while they were doing the attack on Pearl Harbor.
You tie your hair like this. Just leave it loose so it doesn't go. You put it like this.
Okay. Do you make it even?
Yep. I mean, this side should be longer than this one.
Okay.
And then like this. Like this. Like this. Go. That's one way. There are a lot of other ways. It's the simplest.
Here we go. Attention!
Hey, brothers and sisters, yes.
Brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Why you sit down?
Get up! Feel it! Feel it in your bones!
Hey, hey, hey.
The one on the left doing really good.
Hey.
Who on the right?
Here we go. Wow, that was incredible. Schools, churches, and communities everywhere. And you're a part of our community.
Thank you so much for stepping with Step Africa. And don't forget, attention!
Okay guys, well, we just finished the National Museum of Black History and Culture with our African American friend. What did you think? Did it represent your culture?
Not really.
Yeah, it seems like North Africans are a little bit overlooked when we're talking about African Americans, but that is what it is, I suppose. Have anything to add?
Nope, a lot of good history in here though. I really liked the part about them in the military, and I definitely think if you're out here, you should come and check this out. Definitely patronize it. It's definitely worth coming and seeing.
All right guys, well, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, comment down below, tell us what you liked about it, tell us what we should do more of. And, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Say just life.
Just life and more.
And more.